Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the SyrupCast, episode 11, where we do it for the pod on a weekly cadence. I'm very happy to have my partner in crime, Daniel Bader, here with us live from Chicago, the Windy City, with some exciting Motorola news.
I got Common sitting next to me, but you know, just for brevity's sake, I won't show him to you.
Eating all that weird Chicago-style pizza. And then here with me in the T-Dot, representing Jane McIntaggart.
Hello.
And if you're expecting any other mobile news this week not related to hardware announcements, this is the wrong podcast for you, because as we saw yesterday, September is the time of phone announcements. And as the mobile ecosystem grows, smartwatch announcements, the crazier the better, and VR announcements. But let's get into the fun stuff, Daniel. You're in Chicago talking with Motorola, and you're getting to play with all the things that we've yet to play with. So why don't you give us the rundown of both the announcements and your hands-on impressions, because you're our hands-on guy.
Yeah, so while I'm speaking to you, we're actually still under embargo, but that will lift by the time this comes out, which is kind of cool because I'm actually talking in the future. And I'm talking in the future.
2000.
I'm talking about this lovely device. This is the Moto X, not to be confused with this lovely guy, which is also the Moto X. They're not renaming them, so it's just going to be the Moto X, Moto G.
So it's not the plus one?
No, it is not.
Ooh.
So the Lukes were correct. Internally, it's known as the Moto X Plus 1 just because they don't want to get the SKUs confused.
Mm-hmm.
But this will be coming to Canada. It's going to be coming on TELUS. We don't know pricing right now, but TELUS will be the launch partner. And there's also a new Moto G, which is 5 inches. It's pretty much the same hardware as the previous version, but it's got an 8-megapixel camera instead of a 5. It's got a 5-inch display, still very nice. Going to be super cheap, but we don't have pricing. And then there's the Moto 360, which is coming to Canada later this fall for $279. And then there was this awesome in-ear bud Bluetooth headset thing called the Moto Hint, and we haven't been able to use that yet because it's still very much a pre-production thing. But it basically looks like one of those Secret Service earbuds, and it will communicate with your Moto X, and it allows you to basically say what you would say to your phone, but into your ear, and you get turn-by-turn directions. You can like do anything you can on Google Now, but it's all done using voice in your ear, and it's pretty cool. So, yeah, Moto X is probably the biggest thing here. I really like the 360, but we've seen it before. It's still got ADAPT display, but they're not calling it Moto Display. So it's got this Super AMOLED display that uses the screen to display notifications. Now you have more notifications, which is great. And then you have this really weird dual LED ring around the camera. So it doesn't look very good, I think. It actually looks kind of ugly, but it makes for a very interesting looking phone. So,
You think that phone looks ugly? I think that phone looks like just all the sexiness.
I think you think the camera, like the dual LED, looks ugly. Like
No, yeah, I think everything looks good, but I mean, just compare the simplicity of the Moto X, which was symmetrical. It had the camera, the flash below, and then this little dimple, to this. It just, I don't know, it just seems a little bit obtuse. But
have you taken any photos with it yet?
Not really.
How does the roundy flash impact?
Well, I don't know. The flash is not a big deal because nobody ever uses flashes. But apparently, the camera itself is way better than it was, and that's one thing for me that was the biggest, the most lackluster aspect of the original was just the terrible camera. And this really addresses everything that the original didn't have, except for the fact that it only has 16 gigs of internal storage and no expandability. So, and we're not getting Moto Maker in Canada, so that sucks.
So it's going to be basically for Canada. It's going to be either that ugly as sin bamboo or white.
Oh, I like the bamboo.
I don't like the bamboo. Yeah.
I like the bamboo.
It'll be either the ugliest sin bamboo or the black, which is really nice. Yeah. Anyway,
sorry, go ahead.
You guys, so what do you think? I mean,
You got the 360, right? Is it? is it as beautiful in person? Like, what do you think? Have you been using it?
I think it's by far the nicest looking Android Wear device to date. They also announced 2 special editions that are going to come to Canada later in the year, hopefully. They're stainless steel bands, so there's going to be a black stainless steel version and a regular brushed aluminum, stainless steel, a brushed stainless steel version, and they're beautiful because they go really nicely with the watch face itself, which is made of metal. But the standard versions that we're getting are gray and black leather, and they look like watches. I mean, these are way nicer than anything. Even the new Asus, like, that doesn't even come close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just following up what we were talking about last week with the what was the LG announcement, like this idea that it's got to be an acceptable looking watch first and then a smartwatch second. But how do you feel about the price then? $279, which is a little bit higher than what we've seen.
Yeah, it does seem a little bit higher, but you have to think, okay, what can this do? So it has a heart rate sensor. It also has wireless charging and a cradle. That's awesome. And they actually source the leather in the bands from Chicago. So they found this local tannery that is supplying them with all of their leather. And I think it's a little bit more expensive if you compare it to like the Gear Live, but when you compare it to the G Watch, it's like $30 more, and I totally think it's worth it.
Yeah, but don't you think that in general smartwatches are too expensive? If you're looking at something like the Moto G, which is like a $300 phone, and then you're looking at an accessory like the 360, which is almost the same price. Like, it seems like a lot to pay for an accessory when the source of its information, like where it's drawing all of its information from, is almost the same price.
Yeah, I don't think you can look at it that way though, because you're essentially buying a computer. You have
But you're buying a computer that requires a second computer to function. Like, it's a companion device at the end of the day.
Yeah, but you still can. I mean, it's still a watch. I mean, first and foremost, they're selling it as a watch.
Well, does it function as a watch? Because I left my Pebble to die over the weekend. Did not take it to the cottage because that would be silly. Powered it up today. It was not initially paired, and it thought it was Saturday. So it literally couldn't function as a watch until I paired it to my phone. But let's, we have tons of other announcements. Whether or not smartphones or smartwatches are going to be worthwhile as smartwatches, or
whole other pod.
Yeah, it's a whole other pod, and we have maybe a bajillion other announcements to go through. So I guess we probably want to do this by, and Daniel, I don't know how much time you have left here, so thank you for the Motorola stuff. If we can, I want to do the Samsung news right now, because not only were you in Chicago, you were also in New York, the Big Apple, eating the New York style pizza, spending some time hands-on with the Note 4 and the Note Edge, as well as what I think should be your profile picture for all time, the Gear VR.
Yeah. So in contrast to the subdued atmosphere of Motorola, and everything here is super chill, the employees are basically just like, yeah, guys, we made a really cool phone. We use it. We make it for ourselves. If you want to buy it, cool. We'll still be here. Whereas Samsung is like, rah, 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 our phone is the best. You must buy our phone. These are the reasons that we are so much better than Apple. And over the course of their keynote, they kept on reiterating that they are innovators. They are not followers. That they made metal phones before Apple made metal phones. They made edge-to-edge screens before anybody else made edge-to-edge screens. And it was really apparent that they were trying to push back against some of the criticism that they've received over the last couple of years, that they just take other people's ideas and market the hell out of them and then sell them as their own products. So what I saw from the Note 4 was a really well-made smartphone. If you just took a smartphone, if you took the Note 4 and removed Samsung's legacy from it, you would have I cannot tell you how much more usable the TouchWiz from 2014 is over just a year ago. It is night and day. It's nice. It's smooth. It doesn't beat you over the head with features. They actually they actually help you download new features instead of just preloading everything on your phone and slowing it down. So it seems like they've finally realized that they can't just throw the kitchen sink at you, because you're actually going to like suffocate under the weight of it. So they've really changed their attitude. The Note 4 is it's just a huge device. It's massive. So, and it's dense. Like, it's 180 grams. It feels like a tablet, and that's because it has a metal frame. But
because it's like 6 inches.
It's huge. Yeah, it's 5.7.
5.7, yeah.
It's got a really nice screen. The QHD display on it is way better than the IPS display that's found on the LG G3.
Because last week we were talking about how we didn't think any device needed such a high-resolution display. Do you think that...
Oh, it's totally overkill. I mean, don't get me wrong. If they just improved the Note 3 screen, it would be just as good. I mean, I couldn't tell the difference in terms of in terms of pixel density, but it was but neither was it distractingly bad the way that the G3 is often distractingly bad. So it doesn't take away from anything. And the fact that it has a new Snapdragon 805 chip means that it won't actually slow down like the G3 did, because it's running the same chip as the Galaxy S5, but there's way more pixels to push. So,
what did you think of the specific software improvements? Because while you were in New York listening to the acerbic comments, the acerbic yet witty comments of one Mr. Ryan Biden, we were watching the live stream from I don't know where it was located. It looked like in
Berlin.
Yeah, but I'm not sure where in Berlin, but it was huge. And the presentation was significantly different because obviously much more highly orchestrated, 3 people speaking, and talking a lot about the core experiential components to both the design and then what they decided to focus on with the software. So looking at like the multitasking and things like that. Have you been able to get a sense of that just playing with it, or the things that they're doing with the S Pen?
Yeah, I mean, this is not a huge change from last year. The multitasking menu is interesting because they basically stole it from stock Android L. I don't know if there's any advantage to it other than aesthetic, but they are really emphasizing content partnerships this time. So they've gone all in with Flipboard instead of trying to mask the fact that they're not using Flipboard for their kind of news briefing panel. They're just going all in with it. They're calling it Flipboard briefing. It's really nice. The S Pen has been simplified, so you only have like 4 things you can do. They've combined a bunch of the functions that you would usually have to do 2 or 3 different things for into a single function. I don't remember the specifics, but what they're trying to do now is allow you to take a screenshot or a bit of a snippet of your screen, and it will then scan that for any usable information, and you can then share it with other apps and stuff. So they're really trying to make it into a computer, or as close to a laptop type experience as you can get on a smartphone.
Yeah, they actually use the analogy of using it as a mouse during the Berlin presentation, which I found interesting. I don't know how that sells. But okay, then moving forward, because the one thing that they didn't talk about in Berlin as much, which really surprised me because it's almost the more interesting device.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, talking about pushing this idea of being first in innovation and things like that, I think the Note Edge is a really interesting thing that I don't think Samsung necessarily knows what to do with yet. So just going through, I think the specific features. So it's obviously the right edge of the screen kind of waterfalls over. And through software, it can be set up as a second display area, which can be used for, I think, notifications, kind of like a widget, streaming ticker.
An alarm clock at night.
Yeah, like an app launcher, and a few other features. And I was really surprised that, obviously, the Note 4 is a big flagship device for Samsung, but the Note Edge is pretty much the same thing. And they spent way less time talking about it, and it almost seemed like they were throwing out, here's all the things that you can do with this. We don't know exactly what customers are going to respond to yet. We'll wait and see, and then maybe iterate on that. Like that classic Samsung, here's a bunch of stuff, here's that kitchen sink, and then we're going to iterate on the next one.
Yeah, so I talked to Ken Price, the head of marketing for Samsung Canada, and he kind of acknowledged that they don't really know what this is. They have this technology demo. They have this. I mean, I don't know if Jane, if you were at CES a couple of years ago, but Samsung was actually showing a prototype of this exact
Yeah.
type of device, and
They didn't know what it was then either.
no, and they still don't. But now they can actually scale it to the point of distribution. So what he said was the reason they didn't talk about it is because inventory is going to be extremely limited when it first comes out. Not to mention the fact that a Canadian release is not guaranteed. It's been pegged for I think all 4 carriers in America, but they still don't know what the hell it is, and they want to build up app use cases for it by releasing an SDK, the way that they did with the S Pen and with multi-windows. So until they really have a lot of extra third-party use cases for it, I don't know if you're going to hear a lot about it. I mean, the Note 4 is still going to sell like gangbusters, and they're going to use the Edge to talk about how much more advanced the Note is than the S line. And then I think what they'll continue to do is expand the Note line into other form factors. So you'll get this sort of tiered system the way they have in their tablets, where you'll have the entry-level devices, then you'll have the mainstream devices, and then you'll have the premium devices. So you have 3 categories of smartphones.
One of the things I hate about their tablet line is that it seems so convoluted, and they seem to just release tablets like crazy, and like it's not refined. It doesn't seem like they have any clear idea of their tablet line. They just kind of release a tablet for every instance that they can think of, and I would hate to see the Note line go down that road, because even the Galaxy S has kind of gone that way with like the Galaxy S Active and like,
yeah, we were talking about that last week.
Where they've got like a million and one different like variations of the same phone.
Totally, and I do worry about that to some extent, but I also think that the Edge is like it's like the G Flex of Notes, right? Or it's Samsung's G Flex. They had the technology, and they tried to shoehorn it into a consumer product without realizing or thinking about what it could actually do to help people. Mm-hmm. So there's no distinct advantage. It's actually quite uncomfortable to use because it's wider, and it moves the power button onto the top of the device, which is really uncomfortable for a phone that big. So you're met with this experience of like, I have to basically fit this phone's uniqueness into my own lifestyle, but you have no idea how to do that because there's never been anything like this before. But to be fair, a lot of people said the same thing about the Note when it first came out. They had no idea why you would want a phone that big. And early adopters found use cases for it, and then eventually it became super popular. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think this is going to sell like crazy. I just think it's a good experiment for Samsung to see whether there's public interest. And because they're so vertically integrated, they won't lose money on it because they probably have expectations for volume, and they are going to adjust their distribution accordingly.
Yeah, and then I would assume that bringing something to market only, I think hammers out the logistical requirements for them to, if they have a future model, to really be able to like build that to scale, right? This is if it's a limited run, they'll probably sell it out and be ready to go for the next one. But okay, so in the interest of discussing things that they've released that don't seem like people are going to know how to use them. Good Lord, the Gear VR. So Jane, I think at this point you might have jumped to covering other device announcements. But what was the first thought going through your head when you saw
Well, it's the same as any I think that we started first hearing about the Gear VR maybe a year ago, or definitely around CES time, just after earlier this year. And it's so ridiculous for anybody to think that this. I don't know if they're kind of targeting as a mobile device, because it's like the Google Cardboard, you put the phone in the back of the goggles. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if that means it's supposed to be that you can take it anywhere, or if people are expected to use it at home. I just don't get it. I don't get why. Yeah, but I don't get why if they don't expect you to sit on a bus with this giant thing on your head, if they're like, well, no, like you're supposed to use this at home, it's like a home entertainment thing. I don't know why if I have a home entertainment thing, I wouldn't want it powered by something that isn't my phone. I just don't understand. It seems like for me it's like the edge thing. I'm like, why do you want to do this? Like, why do you want to do this? Like, why does Samsung want to get into this space? Well, it just seems so weird to me.
I don't know if the portability thing's gonna, like, I don't see people sitting on the bus with this thing yet, especially since Daniel, I think you were mentioning during they were like preventing you from walking around with it because you would just like walk into stuff because the VR experience is significant, but I think the straps are more so that with the Google Cardboard you actually have to hold it up. Whereas
no. I know the straps. Like it's just like it's supposed to be so you can sit there and be comfortable. I just don't understand why it exists. I would never want to use this product. If I was gonna have an entertainment experience, I would use like a standalone system. I wouldn't base it on my smartphone.
Well, but so I think the relationship then with Oculus and John Carmack was actually at the Berlin presentation. I think is very informative because it indicates probably this idea that or a hypothesis that customers are more likely to buy something that is enabled through their phone rather than taking the leap on VR technology right away. And I can surely see Oculus looking to create a hierarchy or stack of VR systems so that there's almost like an entry device for people because obviously this is just a phablet screen that sits in front of two splitters rather than what Oculus is doing, but it's still kind of Oculus approved, right?
No, but that is exactly what Oculus is doing. So Oculus is the Gear VR is an Oculus, essentially. The only difference is that an Oculus has a built-in screen, which is actually a Note 3. The early prototypes were using a Note 3's screen. The other thing is that you're not looking at your phone's screen. You're not seeing Android projected in front of you in 3D. There's this custom UI that's been developed specifically for the Gear VR based on Oculus's virtual reality optimizations, and it has a proprietary input method, so you don't have to kind of use it the same way you would use an Android phone. So it's basically just using the hardware of your smartphone as a conduit to installing apps and enabling other features, but it's not. You're not using your smartphone on in your eyes. Like it's not. It's not
I know.
Transmitting I didn't mean to indicate that, but go ahead, Jane.
I'm just saying that I think that I don't know if the Note as a platform would be able to handle the kind of games that I would want to play using a VR headset.
Oh, it can.
Temple Run?
I mean, they told you.
Yes.
But what kinds of games are you thinking of?
I don't know. Like at the demos at CES, we were using like Oculus to play like Half-Life and stuff.
Yeah, you could play Half-Life on the Adreno 420 is just as fast. What's slightly less fast than the Shield's Tegra K1. So if you look at like that, you could definitely play Half-Life, or even Half-Life 2.
But doesn't that indicate a market break? Like if someone wants to play, if you're a hardcore gamer that wants to get into the VR stuff, you're gonna buy something made straight from Oculus. If you are the type of person that buys a phablet because you don't want to carry a phone and a tablet or a phone and a laptop, you're going to probably be more likely to buy something that works with your phablet for that experience because you're probably a little less dedicated, but may still be interested. It's like the difference between buying a flat screen TV, like an HD 1080p screen, and someone investing in like a 72-inch screen home entertainment system, right? There's got to be, for VR to work, for the industry to work, there's got to be a stratification of entry points.
This needs to have porn. I feel like the Gear VR needs to have porn. I feel like that's gonna, like, movies and like porn are gonna be like the main use case for something like this.
It'll be games. It'll be virtual reality porn games. Yeah.
Porn games.
100%.
Choose your own
Okay,
adventure.
well,
Fleshlight.
we hit porn way later than I thought there, but that indicates that it's time to move on. So, let's talk Sony. Oh my God.
Oh
Is,
my.
The
is
fourth.
there anything that Sony didn't announce yesterday? Jane, why don't you walk us through, because you killed this, right? Your
Is there
announcement for
anything that
post.
Sony didn't announce that we didn't already know about? I mean, we had so much yesterday that we had heard about already. I think the only thing that we hadn't really heard about was the Smartband Talk, which is the upgraded version of their fitness band, and it adds like an e-ink display, which is pretty cool. I can't remember. Do you remember how much that costs? I think it's going to be like $199 or something. Is that? Did I remember that? Did I remember that?
Checking now, but as
It's
I
like
checked,
160. It's 160 euro. So
That's
like
way too
200.
much.
That's like that's like $210. But I think that they'll probably price it at like $160. I would hope, considering when you have devices like the Moto 360, which is what, like $260.
so the price conversion won't be 1-to-1. They'll
No,
keep
I
it.
doubt it. Well, no,
price.
I think it might be 1-to-1. I think it might be $160. I would hope so. I hope they would just do
But
like
then
a
so
direct
the-
switch out of the currency.
Yeah, and I don't even really know if at 160 we were talking about 279 for Moto 360.
Yeah.
160 is like, but so we got the Xperia Z3.
Yeah. The
We have
Z3,
the Z3
the Z3 Compact, the Z3
We
Compact
have the-
tablet.
Thank you. Almost missed that one. The Xperia E3, which is their mid-range option. We have the Smartwatch 3, and then we had. I feel like I'm missing 7 tablets that they also announced.
No, they only
Or
had
no,
one
that was the
tablet.
Acer stuff. Okay.
Yeah,
So
the E3 is a
do we
weird
care
device.
about any?
No, I don't. Like the Z3 is the same as the Z2 mostly. It can shoot video in 4K, I think. But other than that, like it looks kind of the same. And I think they tried to. I think they knew too, because they tried to pitch it as, oh, this is like continuing on the success of like the Z2 is the Z3, and I'm like, it's because it's the same phone, like with just like a few like tweaks, a few key differences. But other than that, it's.
I was thinking about this yesterday. Is this not a brilliant move by Sony, though? Because they basically have to do one thing and do it over and over again. And I mean, Apple's been successful with this, but Sony can't get away with doing what Apple does, because even the hardware increases year over year between Apple devices are significant enough to warrant new names. But I don't think this device is anywhere near different enough from the Z2, which was nowhere near different enough from the Z1, which was only slightly better than the Z, to warrant having 4 generations of phones that look and feel exactly the same. It's sort of insulting in a way.
Well, it's interesting because you see that in the laptop space, and you see that a little bit in the tablet space, where the need to rebrand each model each year, if it's a refresh, is not as prevalent. I was really surprised that Motorola is taking that stance, that it's not the G1, G+1. It's funny, we have a different name for it internally because we don't want to get confused, but we're going to keep the same name for consumers because they won't be confused in any way. But I think this isn't this like, there are parts of Sony that still make really cool hardware.
It's not their phone division.
And there are parts of Sony that are just like, screw it. We're just going to gut the thing, put in some new internals, and concede. Or maybe they're just like, this is the perfect hardware design.
That's what I was like. Maybe they're just like, they cannot improve upon it. It is perfection. But they do this, and you see this in other places, like the E3 was announced yesterday. And this is one that like was not rumored at all. Like Sony had been saying it had 3 devices, and then this one just kind of came out a little bit out of nowhere the night before and was leaked. But when we were hearing about it and it was a mid-range phone, we were thinking like, yeah, this might be one of the most exciting things that they announced tomorrow. This could be a competitor to the Moto G, because they had the M2 earlier this year, and that was just a bit disappointing. And then the E3 was announced yesterday, and it's almost exactly the same as the M2, but in some cases worse. It has less storage. It's got a lower resolution display. It's like, I don't get it.
It's close enough for them to keep it in that price range, but the margins are probably better on the device for them to make more profit off of it. I think we have indication, I don't know if we posted this yet, but pretty much all the Sony announcements are coming to Canada in some form or another, right? So
yeah, which is actually kind of cool because I think just from a sheer device perspective, the Z3 Compact is by far the most interesting one. You know, it's a 4.6-inch phone that's really slim, light, and has a 20.7 megapixel camera and like a 2600 milliamp hour battery. Like, that's pretty damn good. And I prefer a device, you know, around the size of the Moto X, the original one, and that sounds like it's just up my alley. So I think a lot of people are going to be quite happy with that.
Yeah, and then following the latest developments, all the advertisements are based upon it being water resistant, right? Or I guess waterproof.
Well, they're all waterproof. I mean, that's one of Sony's continued advantages is that all of their devices are waterproof, and like not just like resistant, but like you can basically submerge this in water for a week, and it'll be fine.
Do you think that relates a bit to the hardware similarity, like just the need for them to like have they figured out something in terms of waterproofing that relates?
They figured out how to make one phone waterproof, and they're just going to keep re-releasing the same phone.
Yeah, but I don't think that's fair because you know you can still create different. I mean, even the Moto X, like the new one, looks different from the Moto X. Shit, you're right. That's so annoying. You know, it's like the Z3 is slightly slimmer, slightly lighter, and slightly, you know, has slightly smaller bezels around the screen, but is otherwise unchanged. I don't think that warrants a new name. I'm sorry, Sony. You don't have the right to call it the Z3.
Well, they have the right to do whatever they want, but they also have the right to no longer be a hardware leader, right? But so talking about, I guess, one thing that interested me, just in a minor way, just the forwarding the Android Wear with the Smartwatch 3 announcement yesterday, we got confirmation that standalone functionality, like certain aspects, will be coming to Android Wear, so it won't be a complete mirror of what's happening on your phone. So that includes GPS support, ability to interact with other Bluetooth devices. So the smartwatch would not just a slave unit. Is there anything else? You know, the Smartwatch 3 is another thing where the European pricing is 230 euros, which is about 249 Canadian. Comparing what the Smartwatch 3 is offering in relation to, say, something like the Moto 360, is there any interest in this device?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Sony's had a good pedigree. It has a good pedigree when it comes to smartwatches. I mean, the Smartwatch 1 and 2 were not impressive software-wise, but they have enough experience to make decent products. And I've always liked Sony's hardware. You know, I like the Smart Band. I like what they're doing with it. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'd pick it over the Moto 360, though.
No, I think it looks really kind of, I don't know, it looks more like a sport watch. It looks kind of juvenile. It's like it's square, like all encased in rubber. Like it doesn't look like a watch that you would wear every day.
Yeah, but it's got that classic Sony, slightly understated but also obtuse design, right?
Maybe. I think, like you said, Doug, just going back to what you said before, that Google talked earlier this week about how Android Wear was going to have several updates before the end of the year that would bring standalone functionality like GPS support and, you know, support for other wearable devices. They never actually said that when those updates would be coming, but the launch of the Smartwatch 3 is for October, so I guess we can assume that those updates will be here within like the next 6 to 8 weeks, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, and that's all software updates, which are then like
will be utilized by hardware, in the devices, I guess.
Yeah. So is there any indication that the Moto 360 will be able to do that stuff, Daniel? Did they mention that at all?
No, they're not going to discuss Google's plans. No OEM is going to go behind their back. I mean, that's really how, like, they're basically waiting for Google to say yes, and that's important to realize, that any improvements to Android Wear are coming through official channels. So all of these devices have probably been built with these features in mind. But right now GPS is based on, your phone. I don't know if this has a GPS antenna in it.
I think it does. I think that's what Google was saying earlier, is that it would have, they would bring GPS support so that you could leave your phone at home and like go for a run, and your watch would track your run instead of your phone. And that's what Sony talked about on stage too.
It's got 4 gigabytes of RAM as well, and there's got to be a reason for that.
Storage.
It's 4 gigabytes of storage. Somebody made a mistake.
Whoops.
We'll go back and correct that.
Miss Jane. That it reminds me of when we were talking, the other smartwatch that we saw yesterday was the Zen watch, and it reminded me again. I don't know if you remember, Daniel, when we were at Google I/O, they said that Google said that they weren't going to allow like third-party skins and UIs on Android Wear for the moment, because they just wanted everyone to kind of leave it alone. But then Asus's Zen watch they were talking about has like the Zen UI, but it sounds like Asus is doing it via like smartphone apps, not too dissimilar to how people are pushing new watch faces to the watches now, because the watch face API isn't available for Android Wear. So what they're doing is they're kind of using a workaround in that they push it to the watch via an Android app. And Asus talked about the Zen UI, and it's like the watch's smart companion abilities, but they say that it's all controlled via the Zen Watch Manager, the Zen Watch Camera, and the Zen Watch Remote Link apps that you have to have installed on your phone. So I wonder how Google will feel about people kind of shoehorning their own UIs on there and their own experiences in that kind of workaround.
Okay, yeah, I guess Asus has no choice because nobody gives a shit about the product. So it's, as I've said before, Android Wear is a platform play. I mean, for Motorola especially, even though you can use it with any Android device, they really are pushing you to buy a Moto 360 with a Moto X or a Moto G. I mean, you're right, it's more expensive than the Moto G, but it's also something that people will associate with Motorola, and then like, oh, Motorola, I heard they also make a phone. Maybe it'll work best with that. Same with this. They want you to, and Samsung's especially guilty of this, they want you to use their products together because that incentivizes people to stay within their ecosystem. And Android is too diffuse to really keep people loyal, because Android is just an idea. It's just a platform on which OEMs build products. So in order to keep people in the same ecosystem, Asus is like, okay, well, we'll make a couple of apps that we need our phones for.
I guess you need the phone. I don't know if you do. They don't specifically say that it only works with Asus phones.
Oh, well, I guess that makes sense. But still, it makes more of a... It incentivizes people to stay within the same ecosystem.
Right.
Yeah, but so, with that being said, though, like, if wearables and smartwatches are even more commoditized than Android smartphones, I just fail to see even why, like, the margins on these devices can't be that high.
No, they're not.
Like, I guess it's just a land grab. Like, at this point in time, like, people, everyone's got to have this on their portfolio. The Zen Watch is actually interesting that, with the exception of the Moto 360, which we just mentioned, is one of the most expensive Android Wear smartwatches, right? I think it's around straight up €200, 260 Canadian. It does actually look, it's another one of those smartwatches that actually looks like a watch, so you're probably paying more on the high end for that experience. But, is the idea here that, like, oh, I would keep my watch longer than I would keep my phone, and because it's an Asus watch, I might use it with an Asus phone because it has that app that I like? I don't think people, we're seeing a situation right now with this slowdown in tablet sales because people don't refresh them at the speed in which they do smartphones. Mm-hmm. Is anyone going to refresh a smartwatch?
I think they will, because we're still so early in I guess, like, the smartwatch cycle. Like, I think it still has a long way to go. People even now are saying, yeah, the people who purchase their smartwatches like in July are going to say, oh, my watch doesn't have GPS, so I can't leave my phone at home and go for a run. Right. Like, I think it's still way too early to say people aren't going to refresh them, like, in a year or so.
So,
all right. So there was one other piece of. Oh, were you gonna say, Dan?
No, I just ASUS is not a really well-known manufacturer in North America. I mean, they sell a bunch of tablets, but I think it's important to realize that ASUS's brand recognition in Asia is enormous. They're the third biggest tablet manufacturer in the world, but they also sell a ton of smartphones. And I think that the ZenWatch is just another piece of that ecosystem that they're trying to, you know, they're trying to get people to know that they're not just a one-trick pony.
Mm-hmm.
We'll never know because they don't sell their smartphones in North America. And the smartphone is always going to be that central hub. But when you have a smartphone business, I asked this to the Motorola CEO today, you need those extra pieces to remind you that you're more than just a smartphone manufacturer. Because that's the reason that Samsung has become so enormous, is because they have all those other products to leverage. And I think ASUS is trying that strategy as well.
The network effects, yeah. And you know what? To be fair to ASUS or Asus, we're gonna go both ways on this pod because that's how we do. They do hit that kind of. They hit the aesthetic that I think Sony always aims for, but kind of misses. That that nice kind of like luxury hardware kind of look.
Agreed.
But we should talk about what we know that is coming to Canada. That being the MemoPad 7. And Jane, you hunted down this story because there's just some weirdness going on with the announcement around this, right?
Yeah, no, because we just saw, like, I think Daniel just did like a hands-on with the MemoPad 7 like just about a month ago, and all they did was they switched out the processor, and it was a 64-bit like Atom Z 3745 the last time, and now it's the 64-bit Atom Z 3560, which is clocked at like 1.83 gigahertz instead of 1.33, and then it's got more RAM and a higher resolution, so like significant jump in display, but they changed the design up, so it just doesn't make sense. Like, they changed quite a few things about this device, but really, really soon after they launched the MemoPad 7, like the most recent one. So
yeah. So I got confirmation from ASUS Canada just before this pod.
All right.
And they said that it will not be replacing the recently announced units, but it will be a premium version of the MemoPad. So, you know, the ones that we showed you, they were 1280 by 800 pixels. They weren't that premium. This is just going to be their basically Tab S equivalent.
Yeah.
But not branded with a different name, or they just not released that information at this time? Because
they also had the MemoPad like 7 HD too. So where does this sit?
Oh, I guess those are being eliminated. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because, you know, the resolution increase is significant. I think so is the processor switch.
Mm-hmm.
They shaved over a millimeter off of the thickness of the tablet, which sounds like nothing but feels like everything. And with this one, Jane, as you so aptly put in the title, it's a Lumia in the front and a clutch purse in the back.
They think it's a clutch purse. As someone who owns clutch purses, and I bet that nobody on the team that designed this owns a clutch purse because this doesn't look like a clutch purse.
But no,
they're like supposed to look, and I was reading about it on other sites too, and they were saying, you know, they're saying it's, you know, they're like, oh, it looks like a clutch purse, and they were apparently, when they were announcing it, they didn't come out and say that it was for women, but that was the kind of the impression they gave, was that it was like a beautiful looking device for people who care about style, and yeah, they were like definitely pushing the purse aspect of it, and wallets too, I guess. Does it look like a wallet? I don't own a wallet.
But it looks luxury, whatever it looks like. It
is a gorgeous looking device. I agree.
Okay.
I think it looks a whole lot nicer than the last one that we just saw.
Or what we're going to talk about next, which is Acer, the last of the flurry of announcements yesterday. And I don't know if we want to start with the budget
the liquid
Z500, the Liquid, or if we want to go with their tablet line, which is basically a tablet for everyone, the same tablet for everyone with a different name. The Iconia Tab 10, Iconia 1.8, and the Tab 8.0. W, W for Windows, were the three that they announced yesterday.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'd have to touch them to really know. And it's hard to know when you just look at a spec sheet or whatever. If it's really going to be everything you want it to be. But I've never been a fan of Acer hardware, so I'm not about to go crazy. Do we know if these are coming to Canada? I don't think they had European pricing and but they haven't. I don't think
as of announcement, we have nothing, and I don't think any follow-up brought us confirmation.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just I'm kind of like
All the Acer devices end up coming to Canada, and they all end up like falling in between the cracks.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like. Even like when you were like, "Oh, one more device," I was like, "Yeah, but I just can't bring myself to care." Like, there's nothing. It doesn't like at least the Asus like even they have one a month ago, and I'm already like more excited about this because at least it looks nicer and it like takes some risks with the design. The Acer just looks it just looks like every other tablet that I've seen for the last year.
Yeah, and the Liquid Z500 doesn't look. It just looks like what Android smartphones looked like 2 years ago.
Burn.
So.
All right, guys. I gotta interrupt you. I'm so sorry. I actually have to run.
Oh, okay.
But I will be back next week after the. We'll probably do a special edition. Hopefully, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of the podcast to do to cover the Apple announcements.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that'll be fun. But I gotta do my interviews with various Moto people. So.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for
Safe
joining
travels.
us, even though you're so busy, and for bringing us all the Moto sexiness.
It's my pleasure. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Well, on that note, with our fearless leader off again to Hobnob in Chicago with Motorola CEOs, getting the news done, and we were able to run through all of Wednesday's announcements.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
We didn't tackle Thursdays, all the Microsoft Lumia stuff. Huawei, did I pronounce that right?
Huawei, yeah.
Huawei also had a few device announcements. I'm sure we're going to see a few more. Obviously, next week is the big Apple announcement. So let's call this part one of a thrifty two-parter. Shout outs to everyone in the comments from last week. We're out. Hardware plenty.
Bye.
Subscribe on iTunes. Rate us 5 stars.